Good morning, friends. I'm so glad you decided to join me to get your day started with a biblical perspective. Today, we're going to continue with our Womanhood series, so I hope you enjoy. Today, we're going to be chatting about a lady named Rahab, who we find in Joshua 2 in the Old Testament. And for anyone who might not know who Rahab was, let's just say she was a lady of the night in Jericho. And this unlikely woman actually demonstrates her faith in a pretty remarkable and legit way. So we're going to jump right into Joshua 2. I think we can learn a lot about faith from Rahab. Then Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 spies from Shittim. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, "Look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land." So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab: "Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land." Okay, pause. I think it's really interesting to me that the king had Rahab right on speed dial. She's a prostitute. I feel like the king communicated right to her after the spies came. I thought that was really interesting. But in some commentaries I researched, it said that Rahab would have been aware of different men who were coming in and out of the city because she was running, or she was the prostitute operation. Men would come and visit often, so it was not uncommon for different men to be there, kind of it being a revolving door. Their men would go and come because they thought it would be a covert place where they could hide. So there were unknown men there all the time, and the spies could be inconspicuous there, kind of like hidden. I don't know if that's necessarily the reason why the king reached right out to her, and I'm sure you could do more research, but something interesting to think about. Okay, continuing in the story. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the gate, they left. I didn't know which way they went. Go after them quickly, you might be able to catch them." But she had taken them to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax she had laid out on the roof. So the men were sent out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of Jordan. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Okay. So we have Rahab, who clearly just lied to the king of Jericho's men to protect the Israelite spies. It's pretty bold. So what compelled her to do this? Why lie to protect these men? Rahab explains herself. She says to the spies, "I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did do to the 2 kings of the Amorites in the east of Jordan, who you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is the God in heaven above and the heaven on earth below." I really like the translation here. I'm using the NIV. I do that when it's a story because it's just a little bit easier to get through and explain, I think, over podcast. But she uses the phrase that they were melting in fear because of what the Lord had done for his people. The expression of their hearts being melted shows that the people were mentally and emotionally drained and defeated. It was obvious that the Israelites could not be stopped because of their God, and Rahab understood what God was doing at this time, giving the land to the Israelites. And not to sound like a broken record, but our Biblical Blessing series, we kept going back to the idea that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and that will lead to a life of contentment. Proverbs 9 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." Rahab had the foresight and the wisdom because she feared the Lord, and this resulted in an outward expression of faith. My dad said it like this in his sermon message of Joshua 2. Faith requires risk-taking. There is no such thing as faith without risks. We can learn this from Rahab. It's risky not to seek the marketplace advancement, to sacrifice to get out of debt, to not defend yourself, to give someone a coat as well as the shirt that they ask for. That is a basic element of faith, commitment before knowledge. I think it's also valuable to note that Rahab's information did not come from a mystical experience. She didn't have a visit from an angel or a special vision or revelation or message from God. She logically looked at and assessed what God had done in the past for his people, and she recognized that their Lord was the God in heaven above and the God below. I think this is a good reminder that while everyone has a different personal experience and testimony to their lives, and we can certainly share that with each other and learn from each other, the certainty of truth will always lay in Scripture. If you're listening to grow spiritually from someone else's personal story or wish to gain knowledge from an individual's experience, that's okay, iron sharpens iron, but make sure you are filtering it all through a biblical lens. And I'm just going to do a quick plug here. I'm reading a book called Counterfeit Kingdom, and it's about the new revelation, new prophets, new age practices in the church, specifically NAR, the New Apostolic Reformation. And it's actually really interesting and opening my eyes to a lot of patterns that we're seeing in Christian churches today and the danger of false teaching that's becoming very, very popular in mainstream, and a lot of us participate in it without realizing it, especially through music. So it's something that, in talking about this, it's the Counterfeit Kingdom or the NAR movement is really based on experience, and this book definitely is opening my eyes to some interesting things. So just a reminder, friends, we need to make sure we go back to Scripture and compare everything with Scripture, because that is the truth, not what someone says. It's what's in the Scripture. And it's really important for us to take the time to dig into ourselves and compare that. Okay, Rahab's beliefs were consistent with her actions. Her choices were directly connected to her theology. James uses Rahab as an example in James 2. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone. In the same way, was it not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? Rahab's fear of the Lord guided her understanding, and that understanding resulted in actions that were consistent with her beliefs. These beliefs, fueled by her conviction, gave her the gumption she needed because it was based in truth. And the story continues. So Rahab goes up and starts talking to the spies. She says, "Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and my mother and my brothers and my sisters and all who belong to them, that you will save us from death." And the men responded, "Our lives for your lives." I've always been one to really admire people who know when they have the upper hand and know when to take their opportunity. And Rahab used her advantage to preserve herself and her family. And that definitely, the fear of the Lord is what motivated her to feel like she needed to rescue and protect her family. It is also assumed that she will become part of Israel. And not to give anything away, spoiler alert, so plug your ears if you don't want to know how this ends yet, but she is later mentioned as one of the 5 women mentioned in Matthew of the genealogy of Christ. Yes, this lady of the night was actually a part of Jesus' lineage, which is just so cool. Rahab chose to do what was consistent with what God was doing. She was actively participating and furthering what God was up to, restoring the land to the Israelites. And again, I just want to emphasize, this is a result of her knowing who God was and what he had done. Rahab didn't have the luxury of an angel telling her what to do or that she would be spared. For all she knew, the spies could have killed her on the spot. This fear that led to actions of her faith sprang from a biblical understanding of God, not an emotional experience. And the spies responded to her. Now the men had said to her, "This oath you made us swear will not be binding to us unless when we enter the land you have tied this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and your mother and your brothers and all your families into your house. If any of them go outside your house into the street, their blood will be on their own hands. We will not be responsible. As for those who are in the house with you, their blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from this oath you have made us to swear." "Agreed," she replied. "Let it be as you say." So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied a scarlet cord in the window. Okay, side note, this might not be related, but first I just want to say, I think the idea of scarlet like being associated with seduction, is that where this comes from all these thousands of years ago? Like the Scarlet Letter, like is this where Scarlet got its start, being like associated with seduction? I don't know, it was just interesting. Okay, Rahab is also mentioned in Hebrews 11 when the author writes a passage entitled Faith in Action. The author mentions Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Joseph, and many others, but in verse 31 we find our girl Rahab. And it says, "By faith the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient." Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So, we have a woman filled with faith, compelled to follow her convictions. The spies leave, and what happens next? Well, you'll have to wait until Tuesday, friends, or go ahead and open up Joshua 6 and see for yourself. But I will leave you with a few points to reflect on today. Looking back, what is a risk that you took in faith, and when was the last time you did that? Does your scriptural knowledge of the Lord result in a faith that produces outward actions? How does your biblical theology affect your daily choices? Well, thanks for listening, friends. I hope you all have fabulous weekends. It's Friday and it feels like fall outside. I think this weekend is going to be pretty mild here, so I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something outside. And again, I know I didn't do a garden update this last weekend. I was sorry, I was super busy. I ripped half of it out, so I'm going to make sure I do a garden update. I have fall stuff planted finally. It took me forever. Actually, it's not even all done now that I think about it. So I guess I'll be doing that this weekend. And I will be doing my coffee and conspiracy next Saturday. I also want to say, if you have any topics that you'd be interested in for the conspiracy, make sure you text me or comment, and I'd be happy to do a little debrief for you. Okay, thanks for listening, friends. You're an encouragement to me. Have fabulous weekends, and I'll talk to you soon.